The Senate and the House of Commons have passed the following bills, to which they humbly request Your Excellency's assent. An act to ensure barrier-free Canada.
In 2019, Canada brought in its Accessible Canada Act. It was meant to bring changes and improvements to our country's accessibility rights for people living with disabilities in this country. A new book is examining this issue, and it's meant to provide guidance to people, businesses, and politicians on what the new rules are and how they're meant to be used. The book is titled The Race to the Starting Line, and it's written by Max Brault. Joining us now is the author, Max Brault. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Rochelle.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, you worked on this act for many, many years, sort of behind the scenes, but very active with it. What was the goal of the act?
Well, the number one goal of the act was to ensure that federally regulated organizations had an understanding of what they need to do to make sure that they were eliminating barriers for people with disabilities. As I say in my book, just because we're in the Charter of Rights saying thou shalt not be discriminated against, people still don't know, and companies don't know what that means. And so this book talks about how these kind of barriers need to be broken down and what needs to be done to be moving the bar further to make sure that people with Canadian citizens with disabilities can interact and have a fruitful life in Canada.
And part of the book's goal is to also educate people with disabilities on who their allies are, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I wrote the book, the number one chief audience I kept on thinking about were people with disabilities who don't work in this industry that I work in, and a lot of them don't really know day to day what their rights are. So, you know, if you love music and all of a sudden you can't get your right tickets to go see a music event or a hockey event, you know, you have some rights to complain about, making sure that there is a spot for you there and that, you know, they recognize your rights to attend those particular events. And so these rights now exist for you to not pick a fight, if that makes any sense.
Well, the act was brought in 2019, but really there's still lots of room to maneuver and improve this. So what is your goal with this book, and what do you want people to realize?
Well, my goal for my book is twofold. Okay. My first one, I wrote the book and I kept one of the principles of the book, which is it's in a very common language. It's not an academic language, because I wanted individuals to read the book that are disabled and to really truly understand what power they now have in their fingertips. The second goal was, when I was having a conversation with the minister at the time, we realized that all the work that we did in creating the act was going to be forgotten as soon as it became a bill from an act. So I want it for prosperity's sake. So I'm hoping like 20, 30, 50, 80 years from now, when somebody looks back and goes, what were they thinking when they were designing this act? They would be able to find this book and then go, okay, this is kind of some of the thinking they were doing. So it's also a prosperity thing and also a legacy piece for all that hard work that we did. Absolutely.
Now, barriers are still there after all this time. There have been improvements, though. In what has your personal experience been like with that?
Well, my personal experience is I've seen every year there's always improvements. Okay. From the time that in the 70s where there was nothing to now where we are today, where it's every year there's something new, there's something going on. It's going to be a battle that's going to exist for a long time, because as soon as we fix one problem, there's another one, right? AI is a great one. When we were writing the act, we didn't see AI coming in the forefront, and nobody talked about it. So when we wrote the act, there was no mention of AI. Now we're sitting there going, wow, what do we need to do to make sure that AI is incorporated in this new act? So, you know, there's always new things popping up, and so the battle will always be continuing forward.
Now, with this book, you're hoping that the battle just starts right at this point and continues in the future.
Yeah, so it goes to the title of the book, The Race to the Starting Line. What a lot of people don't know is that the people in Ottawa, when they're writing a piece of legislation, which is called a bill, they usually been doing it for several administrations, and they could just dust something off the shelf and say, okay, let's clean it up. But it's usually been a decade or 2 decades worth of work. The Weed Act is a great example. That had been surfacing around for almost 20 years. But for this, there was nothing to start it from. So we had to run really quickly for 4.5 years, because the one thing we were told, get it done, get it approved in 4.5 years.
Wow. Well, you did it. Well, the book will be launched at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights tomorrow. Max, thank you for sharing this with us, and congratulations.
Thank you very much.